What's up, everybody? Robbie Rad here, and just wanted to do a little video this morning. I'm just sitting here, getting ready to get into the Word, going through the motions with my morning, and I just thought I'd share a little bit of that process, at least for me, and how I approach it with all of you, because I think it's important. I think a morning routine is important. When I was a young buck, when I was in school, when I first entered the workforce, I was one of those kids. I'd roll out of bed, and just get to it, roll out of bed last second, throw clothes on, disheveled hair, didn't care, wandered to school, often, fell back asleep in homeroom in first period and stuff like that. Same thing with work and when I first entered the workforce. I was that kind of kid. Again, just want last second, throw some clothes on, waking up last second, throw some clothes on, get out the door, get on my way, gotta get to work, stop at the gas station, buy breakfast, buy energy drinks or coffee. I was bad with it, man. I remember when I was hanging drywall for a living for a couple years. Every morning I would buy a breakfast sandwich and a 4 pack of Red Bull every morning. Every morning. I mean that alone right there, and then you buy some snacks or something with it. You're looking at like a 20 to $25 bill. Then I don't even know what it would be now. Every morning. That's just the first stop of the day. Usually I'd go somewhere for lunch, spend another 10 to $15 at least. Right before when I was still a bachelor then, right? This is pre having kids, pre having a steady girlfriend. Might have been hanging out with somebody or something like that. But I sit down and do the math, and spending anywhere between 80 to 120 bucks a week just in snacks and energy drinks and food. And that's just like during work hours. That's not including like groceries for dinner or going out with the homies, because I lived in a house with a couple homies that I grew up in back then. It's insane. It's insane the amount of money you could spend and how expensive it can get. So, flash forward to today. There's still days, don't get me wrong. I'm a human, I'm imperfect. There's still days when I sleep in and I run late, but my brain doesn't work well with that anymore. I need my morning routine or else it throws my day off. But, my work day starts at 8. Being like a leader at work, I try to get in 7:30 to 7:45 ish. Especially this time of year, it's winter. Start the trucks. I open up the shop. I fill the pellet stoves that we heat our shop with. Turn the lights on. Shovel the front porch and front steps. I try to have everything ready before people get in. We had it shoveled and salted before the girls come in the office, so nobody's slipping and falling. I take that responsibility serious, and it's all ready for customers and stuff like that as well. Once the shop opens, but I wake up nowadays. My alarm goes off at 4:15. Some days I don't get up till 4:30. I think it was 4:45 when I finally said, "All right, I gotta get up." And being winter again, like I said, this time of year, I'm waking up. The first thing I do is usually wander downstairs, usually taking a leak. Gotta start the day with that. I notice as I get older, it's a given. Well, no, rewind that. First thing I do is I roll out of bed, I drop right to my knees, and I thank the Lord for another day of my life. That's number one. I pray, peace and protection and patience over my home for my wife and children while I'm gone. Um, Pray for anything else that might be going on. There might be somebody I'm praying for that they come to the Lord. It might be somebody with a health thing. One of my pastor's wives currently going through some health stuff. I've been praying for her. So I encourage that. Then I come downstairs and take a leak, and sometimes I'm dancing on my knees through that because I gotta pee real bad. But first things first is throwing some praise up to the Lord and thanking Him for all He's done for me and another day of opening these eyes. and then loading the wood stove up. Then usually I'm coming down here. Today I watched a couple videos. I got a Buck and Billy Ray video and a couple shorts of him and Bluegrass Outdoors. Got my wood splitting fix for the morning, gets me all hyped up. I watched Billy over at Prima Pastures Farm this morning talking about what we think is snow and what's actually in it. Love that dude, love his content. So I got both Billies in this morning. And I highly recommend both of those channels if you're not familiar with them. And then, then I started stretching, got my stretch routine in. The older I get, the more important that becomes. Sometimes I'll throw some sit-ups and some push-ups and stuff in there. I'll be honest, this morning I'm running a little behind. But it is what it is, that happens. And try to get into the Word like I'm about to here. I just finished a big study in Daniel where I read it 7 times, and I go a little deeper each time I read it. And praise God, he highlights something new to me each time I read a book like that and do it diligently and repeatedly, which is why I like doing that. And that's a tidbit I came to from a book I read from John MacArthur about a year and a half ago now. Just reading books over and over and over again, reading them consecutively, not just once, because there's so much to take in. And that's why, I've noticed that the Lord highlights something else each time I read it. So, right now I got an egg going in the skillet that I got to go flip here in a second. I make my coffee, fill up my water jug, make my lunch, all that kind of stuff. I have not spent a dime yet this week at work. Last week, I think I spent like $8 because we were below zero for most of the week. We were like in the single digits, but with the wind chill, we were below zero. Most of last week, we had a heat wave. This week, we were in the 20s. So last week I bought a couple coffees, and I'm a donut fiend. I love donuts. They're one of my weaknesses in life. So if I walk into a coffee shop for a coffee, chances are I'm probably walking out with a Boston cream donut too, or two, if I'm feeling really gluttonous. But still, $8 in a week as opposed to, 12 years ago doing 80 to 120. It's a win. And when you have a family and stuff like that, like, you need to take that stuff seriously. And one thing I've really been focusing on is stewardship, stewarding what the Lord has given me better instead of asking for more, right? And then, not to get gross, but I always make sure in my routines, and I've like trained my body, I take a dump every morning, almost every morning, unless I'm off or something, wake up late, you know what I mean, or I'm having something going on with the tummy or something like that. I usually get 1 or maybe 2 if I'm real lucky poops in before I go to work, man. I ain't trying to stop. I'm not the biggest fan of public bathrooms. You gotta do it, but I was that kid where I would actually leave school. I'd skip school and go home because I lived like not even a quarter mile from the school. I'd take a dump at home, and then I'd walk back to school and clock back in, and they'd be like, "Mr. Rademacher, you're already here. Like, we have attendance records that you already been to school, so you left and came back." And I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "Why?" You know what I mean? I left on my lunch break, or I left at study hall. You know what I mean? And I came back. Like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "Would you prefer that I just stayed gone?" I was that guy. I was a wise guy. Still can't be sometimes. But getting back to the point of this video is having a good morning routine. I try to wake up. I try to make sure I'm loading that wood stove so this furnace ain't running like it is right now. I gotta turn that thermostat down. Sometimes, like I did this morning, I'll crank the thermostat a little bit to get the home back up to a good temp, because it's an old drafty farmhouse. And then I'll get the wood stove loaded up and ripping a rock, and then let that maintain that. But sometimes the wood stove will struggle to get it up. It can maintain, but sometimes it struggles to raise the bar, especially when it's as cold as it's been with an old drafty farmhouse. But making sure I'm loading that, I'm saving money there. I gotta load it here in a few minutes. It's gotta get loaded back up before I go to work. Making my breakfast, making my lunch, bringing my water, bringing my coffee, getting into the Word, stretching out, doing a little bit of a workout, push-ups, sit-ups, planks, stuff like that. I found doing all that stuff in the morning, not only am I saving huge amounts of money, which I have to with a family, or else I'd be in stupid debt, and I want to get out of debt. But also, it's good for my brain. It starts my brain on a good pace, and I can smile throughout my day. If I'm rushed in the morning, I tend to be a little crabby. So I recommend everybody finds a good routine, get into one, bring your lunch. You'll save money. You know, it doesn't have to be like boring either. When I go to the grocery store, I grab a couple sleeves of everything bagels and I freeze them. So my breakfast sandwich is on an everything bagel with a slice of Munster cheese, and I'll take one slice of like thick sliced ham, like you would use for like a ham sandwich or something like that, and I fry it in the skillet, flip it, right alongside my breakfast sandwich, throw it on top. Is bacon better? Yeah, but it's much more expensive and it's much more time consuming to fry up, where I can just pull a slice of ham out, fry it alongside of my egg, throw it on top, little hot sauce, little mayo. That's how I like to do it. Wrap it up in some tin foil, throw it in my lunch bag. I've had guys when they first start, they'd be like, "Where'd you get that breakfast sandwich from? That thing looks awesome." I made it at home, and that's a good feeling. You know what I mean? And I encourage my apprentices and stuff too, man. Start bringing your lunch. Stop buying this crap from the store that's half plastic and just rubbery and gross and overly expensive, and make it yourself. Make it better and save lots of money. Get a morning routine. You won't regret it. Take care, y'all. I gotta get into the Word. I gotta get going. But much love. Have a blessed day.